belongs to, and these names have no meaning to us. But a person such as this is someone that I personally consider is trying to undermine everything that the United States has ever stood for. He has been.
You can find the last few minutes of this discussion online as we head back to the floor of the House, just gaveling back in for roll call votes and general speeches.
In the following order: S-684 by the yeas and nays, S-404 by the yeas and nays. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hastings, to suspend the rules and pass S-684, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 684, an act to provide for the conveyance of certain parcels of land to the town of Alta, Utah.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote. There you go.
And the House taking up one of two bills it's going to consider now. This bill gives the town of Alta, Utah, a maximum area of 2 acres from a national forest in Salt Lake County. Under the bill, no compensation would be required from the town, although it would have to pay for the surveying and other administrative costs. And it's only allowed to use the land for public purposes. If the land's used for something else, it would revert back to the national forest system. As the House votes on this bill, let's take a broader look at the House agenda this week.
Daniel Newhouser is a staff writer for Roll Call. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Well, the House is back from break today to a fairly long must-do list of legislative items. Can you tell us those things that they need to work on?
Sure. Well, they're back for 2 weeks before they recess again for 2 weeks. They're still deep in debate negotiations here on the Student Loan Conference Committee and the Transportation Conference Committee. These things are facing expiration at the end of the month here, and if they don't get something done in the next 2 weeks here, it looks like you know, a lot of transportation projects might go the wayside, and student loan rates will drastically rise.
Well, while they continue deliberating off the floor on student loans and transportation, what are we likely to see brought to the floor this week?
Well, this week is dominated by energy bills. Majority Whip Kevin McCarthy in the House has been working on his House Energy Action Team, and they're bringing a package of bills to deal with kind of stripping regulations, a lot of offshore drilling measures, domestic energy production, gas prices. Really, we're seeing a lot of messaging, and I think it's targeted at President Barack Obama, trying to make him seem sort of ineffectual on his domestic energy policy, which they say doesn't focus enough on domestic energy production like oil, coal, and so on and so forth.
Supporters of the energy bill say it's part of the House Republicans' jobs agenda. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, they say that basically stripping these regulations will help these production companies create more jobs, give them less bureaucratic red tape to go through, and allowing these sort of domestic drilling. A lot of federal lands, opening up federal lands to drilling would just basically create jobs for Americans, especially in this down economy.
Well,
Democrats, on the other hand, say, well, if you want to create jobs, why don't you help us out on the transportation bill? They say the Senate passed overwhelmingly a bipartisan transportation bill. They say that this could create some 2 to 3 million jobs, and so that's what we're likely to see from them, or to hear from them. That is, they're going to say, why are we going to have these energy bills? They call these messaging bills. These are political. They say, why not just get to work on the transportation bill?
Any word from the administration on any of this legislation?
Not yet, and not directly, but I have to assume we'll see some sort of veto threat if these things are passed. Certainly the administration is not too keen on some of these bills.
Well, talk in the media about the Keystone Pipeline issue seems to have cooled a bit. Where does that stand?
You know, it's hard to tell right now. I feel like there's just a stalemate, and we saw last week punctuated with sort of these press conference. Barbara Boxer, the top Senate Democrat on the Transportation Conference Committee, we saw her posing in front of cement mixers and calling Republicans intransigent on these issues. You know, it didn't look good, and we'll see when they come back here. The Senate and the House are in session, so I'm sure that they're going to be having negotiations, but everything right now seems a complete standstill as far as the Conference Committee goes.
Anything else significant in the House that you're watching?
Well, of course, everyone's waiting for the health care decision from the Supreme Court. Some people thought that it might come today, but it didn't. So at least we're safe for the next week or so before basically everything is going to be about health care. We'll see. I guess in the House they're promising to have full repeal measures as soon as the health care decision comes down. The next step, a little less clear. They say they want to do replace, but they want to do it incrementally, and it's probably not going to happen before the election. So that's definitely going to be a big issue once the Supreme Court decision comes down.
The House right now voting on transferring land from a national forest to the town of Alta in Utah. And they're going to be taking up one more vote to change the land patent that was issued to a Michigan Historical Society regarding Whitefish Point. That's in Chippewa County in Michigan. And tomorrow, a new member joins the House. Democrat Ron Barber of Arizona won the special election to fill Gabrielle Gifford's seat, and he'll be sworn in tomorrow. Taking a look at Senate lawmakers, John McCain continued to criticize the Obama administration for how it's handled the conflict in Syria. McCain is the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, and he's calling for the U.S. to more actively assist the Syrian opposition. He spoke at the American Enterprise Institute here in Washington, D.C. today, and he also took questions from the audience.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael, and it's a pleasure to be here and back at AEI, and I noticed from the faces in the crowd there's a number of interns here who are spending summer, and I've always thought that if there's such a thing as reincarnation, I wanted to come back as an intern here in Washington in the summertime. I know that most of you are spending a great deal of your time over at the Library of Congress on the weekends as well. It is a pleasure to be back at AEI, one of the foremost institutions in America and the world that I think has contributed so much to the dialogue and discussion and decision-making that takes place here. And it's great to be back among many friends. I usually try to begin my speeches, as I just did, with a joke or some kind, but when we're talking about Syria, it's too horrifying, too heartbreaking, and too exasperating. For 15 months now, the Syrian people have faced an onslaught of violence from Bashar al-Assad and his forces. It's now estimated that as many as 12,000 lives have been lost. Some suspect that figure is even higher, and there's no end in sight. To the contrary, Assad appears to be accelerating his fight to the finish. Amid all this violence, it's important to recognize that the clear trend is toward escalation, both in the nature and the quantity of the killing. Assad has gone from using infantry and snipers to tanks and artillery, to turning loose special units and plainclothes militias to massacre men, women, and children, as happened last month in the town of Hula. We are now seeing a rapid increase in Assad's use of helicopter gunships. Whereas his forces once sought to clear and hold ground, they now appear to be under orders just to kill anyone and everyone they deem a threat. There's every reason to believe that Assad will continue to escalate the violence, more massacres, more use of helicopters, and perhaps worse weapons after that. Meanwhile, Assad and his forces continue to be rearmed by Russia and Iran. There are reports of Iranian operatives on the ground in Syria to help Assad with the killing, while Russia apparently continues to ship heavy weapons, including, as Secretary Clinton has stated, the very helicopter gunships that Assad is currently using to strafe and bomb civilians. Whether these are new helicopters or old ones that Assad sent to Russia to be refurbished and have the blood washed off of them is a distinction without a difference. There are now reports that Russia has dispatched 2 ships and a unit of Russian Marines to reinforce their naval base at Tartus. And they're also delivering additional anti-ship and anti-aircraft missiles to help defend the Assad regime. Clearly, this is not a fair fight. Amid all of the violence in Syria, we cannot go numb to the human tragedy there. In April, thanks to the special efforts of the Turkish government, Senator Joe Lieberman and I visited a Syrian refugee camp in southern Turkey. I've seen my share of suffering and death, but the stories that those Syrians told still haunt me. Men who have lost all of their children, women and girls who have been gang raped, children who had been tortured. And none of this, mind you, was the random acts of cruelty that sadly occur in war. Syrian army defectors told us killing and rape and torture was what they were instructed to do as a tactic of terror and intimidation. So if I get a little emotional when I talk about Syria, that's why. When it comes to the administration's policy towards Syria, to say they are leading from behind is too generous. That suggests they are leading. They're just behind. In its desperation, the administration now appears to be placing its hopes in the Russian government to push Assad from power and a Yemen-like transition. This is the same Russian government that continues to provide heavy weapons and moral support to Assad, that refuses to authorize UN sanctions on the regime, and even blamed Assad's recent slaughter of civilians in Hula on the opposition and foreign powers. The more basic problem with this approach is that the administration has already tried it, and Moscow rejected it and shut down the UN Security Council. What has changed to make things different now? What the President does not seem to realize is what President Bill Clinton came to understand in Bosnia, that a diplomatic resolution in conflicts like these is not possible until the military balance of power changes on the ground. As long as a murderous dictator, be it Slobodan Milosevic or Bashar al-Assad, believes he is winning on the battlefield, he has no incentive to stop fighting and negotiate. The same is true for the regime's foreign supporters. For whatever the reasons, and despite destroying Russia's reputation in the Arab world, the Russian government has stuck with Assad for 15 months. What makes us think that President Putin will change course now when Assad is still the dominant power on the ground? We are now approaching a major point of decision. Kofi Annan's plan, which does not even call for Assad to go, has been a failure for months. The head of the UN monitoring mission in Syria has suspended its operations for security reasons. Assad's increasing reliance on helicopter gunships is giving new impetus to calls for a no-fly zone. And Russia is unlikely to ever support a policy of regime change in Syria. The administration's approach is being overtaken by events. Furthermore, the opposition inside Syria is increasingly forcing the hand of the civilized world to intervene on their behalf because they are growing more effective militarily. This is no thanks to us. Public reports suggest that some of our friends in the Middle East are now arming rebel groups in Syria. This may explain some of the recent reports that opposition forces have been able to destroy some of Assad's tanks and prevent his forces from retaking and holding some key terrain. Some will try to interpret these developments as evidence that the United States should maintain a hands-off approach to Syria. This is wrong. First, the fact that the opposition in Syria is doing better militarily thanks to external support seems to validate what many of us have been arguing for months, that opposition forces have enough organization to be supportable, and that our support can help them to further improve their organization and command and control. This is an argument for doing more, not less, to aid rebel fighters in Syria. Second, While it's good that some foreign military assistance now seems to be reaching the opposition in Syria, this alone will not be decisive. It will not be sufficient to end the conflict faster. It may even just prolong it. Nearly every Syrian I speak with tells me the same thing. The longer this conflict drags on, the more radicalized it becomes, and the more it turns into a sectarian civil war with an escalating spiral of violence that Syrians alone cannot stop. Finally, the Syrian opposition needs to know that the United States stands with them and that we are willing to take risks to support them when they need it most. Our current inaction only denies us the opportunity to have influence with the forces in Syria who will one day inherit the country. And we are ceding that influence to foreign states that may not always share our interests and our values, or worse, to extremist groups that may not always share, that are hostile to us. Our lack of involvement in Syria is not preventing the militarization of the conflict, or lessening the risk of sectarian violence, or countering the appeal of extremist groups. All of these events are just happening without us and without our ability to influence them. In short, the main reason the United States needs to get more involved in Syria is to help the opposition end the conflict sooner, while they can still secure an outcome that is consistent with their goals and ours. We should do so not simply for humanitarian reasons, but because it is our national security interest. In the words of General James Mattis, the commander of U.S. Central Command, the fall of Assad would be the biggest blow to Iran in 25 years. Yes, there are risks to greater involvement in Syria. The opposition is still struggling to get organized. Al-Qaeda and other extremists are working to hijack the revolution, and there are already reports of reprisal killings of Alawites. These risks are real and serious, but the risks of continuing to do nothing are worse. If we fail to act, the consequences are clear. Syria will become a failed state in the heart of the Middle East, threatening both our ally Israel and our NATO ally Turkey. With or without Assad, the country will develop into a full-scale civil war with areas of ungoverned space that al-Qaeda and its allies will occupy. Violence and radicalism will spill even more into Lebanon and Iraq, fueling sectarian conflicts that are still burning in both countries. Syria will turn into a battlefield between Sunni and Shia extremists, each backed by foreign powers, which will ignite sectarian tensions from North Africa to the Gulf and risk a wider regional conflict. This is the course we are on in Syria, and we must act now to avoid it. The U.S. action I envision would not be unilateral. It would be multilateral. We would work closely with Arab and European allies, especially Turkey, and our partners in the Gulf. As in Libya, there would be no boots on the ground, and we would only intervene at the request of legitimate representatives of the Syrian people. Our goal would be to help the opposition change the military balance of power on the ground, thereby creating conditions for an end to the violence, the departure of Assad and his cronies, and a negotiated transition as soon as possible. To achieve this goal, we first need to help the Syrian opposition to establish safe havens inside the country. This is essential for a number of reasons. It is constantly said that the Syrian opposition is disorganized. That may be true at the national and international level, but is much less true at the local level. To the contrary, the revolutionary councils, military councils, and local coordinating committees that have emerged in cities across Syria are increasingly sophisticated and effective. I have met some of their members and representatives, and they're among the most impressive figures I have encountered in the Syrian opposition. Nonetheless, if the Syrian opposition is to succeed, it needs an effective and unifying structure of some kind. It is unlikely that such a structure could be formed in Syria until the opposition has a safe haven, a place where they can emerge from hiding, gather together in safety, select national political and military leaders, and organize themselves better as an alternative governing structure, not just for the purpose of pushing Assad from power today, but to prepare for the huge challenge of administering and securing the country once Assad is gone. This is what the National Transitional Council was able to do in Benghazi, and it is why, despite major challenges, the transition in Libya is largely succeeding. It is less difficult to imagine today, as opposed to several months ago, how safe havens could be established in Syria. Indeed, some analysts suggest that the opposition may already be creating some areas of de facto control in the country. For example, in parts of Idlib province and areas north of Aleppo along the Turkish border, and in eastern Syria around Dar Azari. It is quite possible that the opposition could soon declare parts of Syria to be liberated, as the Libyan rebels did in Benghazi, and then ask for external support in defending that territory. This is exactly what we should be helping the opposition to do. Rather than insisting that we cannot act militarily without a UN Security Council resolution, as the Secretary of Defense recently asserted, we should follow President Clinton's example from Kosovo. We should refuse to give Russia and China veto power over our actions and instead work outside of the Security Council to shape a coalition of willing states with a legitimate mandate to intervene militarily in Syria. Many of our allies are willing to do much more, but only if the United States is with them. As one regional official told the Wall Street Journal last weekend, the Turks in particular are looking for, quote, the ironclad backing of the U.S. and others. We should provide it for them. We should make U.S. air power available, along with that of our allies, as part of an international effort to defend safe areas in Syria and to prevent Assad's forces from harassing them, as they will inevitably try to do. Once defended, these safe havens could become platforms for increased deliveries of food and medicine, communications equipment, doctors to treat the wounded, and other non-lethal assistance. They could also serve as staging areas for armed opposition groups to receive battlefield intelligence, body armor, and weapons, from small arms and ammunition to anti-tank rockets, and to train and organize themselves more effectively, perhaps with foreign assistance. The goal would be to expand the reach of these safe havens across more of the country. As a final part of this strategy, we must think about the situation in Syria in a broader strategic context. The events unfolding from Lebanon to Syria to Iraq are all part of one connected story. We must be thinking about how we could capitalize on the fall of the Assad regime in Syria to weaken and marginalize Hezbollah, to strengthen Lebanon's sovereignty and independence, to support the reconciliation of sectarian conflicts through politics, not violence, to increase the pressure on the Maliki government in Iraq, to roll back its authoritarian tendencies and share power more democratically, and to counter Iran's subversive hegemonic ambition in the region. In all of these efforts, the United States and Turkey share common interests and values, and we need to be working more closely together than ever. But most of all, what is needed most is American leadership.
On this vote, the yeas are 3 yeas.
Mr. Duffy, green. Mr. Duffy votes aye. Mr. Meehan. Mr. Meehan votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 383, the nays are 3. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion is to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hastings, to suspend the rules and pass S-404, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 404, an act to modify a land grant patent issued by the Secretary of the Interior.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
Members just approved a transfer of land from a national forest to the town of Alta in Utah, and they're taking up one more vote in this round, changing a land patent in Michigan. And just a moment ago, we showed a portion of Senator McCain's remarks about Syria from earlier today, and we'll show them in their entirety, including an audience Q&A when the House gavels out.
or 0. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah rise?
Madam Speaker, I send to the desk a privileged report from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 688, resolution providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 2578 to amend the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act related to a segment of the Lower Merced River in California and for other purposes.
Refer to the House calendar and ordered printed. The House will be in order. The House will be in order.
Okay, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Would members please take their conversations off the floor?
You got me.
The gentleman from Minnesota deserves to be heard. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Under Rule 22, Clause 7C, I hereby announce my intention to offer a motion to instruct on H.R. 4348, the Transportation Conference Report. I move that the managers on the part of the House at the conference on the disagreeing votes of the two houses on the Senate amendment to the bill H.R. 4348 be instructed to resolve all issues and file a conference report not later than June 22, 2012.
The gentleman's notice will appear in the record.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Alaska seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1272 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 354, H.R. 1272, a bill to provide for use and distribution of the funds awarded to the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe at all by United States Court of Federal Claims in docket numbers 19 and 188 and for other purposes.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revive and extend their remarks and include extemporaneous materials on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Young, and the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Lujan, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Alaska.
Mr. Speaker, I use myself such time as I may consume. In 1999, the United States Court of Federal Claims awarded a $20 million settlement to the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe for various accounting obligations of the federal government pursuant to the Nelson Act and various treaties that were not covered by the Nelson Act. These funds have been held in trust and have not been dispersed. H.R. 1272 authorized the Secretary of Interior to disperse the amounts held in trust to the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe. I would like to thank Congressman Chip Kovac and the sponsor of this bill, Congressman Colin Peterson, for working with the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe and getting this bill to the floor. I urge adoption of the measure and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. From New Mexico.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the author of the legislation, the ranking member of the Agriculture Committee, Mr. Peterson, as much time as he may consume.
The gentleman is recognized. Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, gentlemen. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 1272, the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe Judgment Fund Distribution Act. 13 years ago, the United States Court of Federal Claims awarded and appropriated $20 million to the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe. This settlement appropriation was to compensate the descendants of the Chippewa Indians of Minnesota for the improper valuation of timber and the taking of land under the Nelson Act of 1889. Now, because of the Indian Judgment Fund Act of 1983, Congress must pass legislation detailing how the settlement should be distributed among the 6 bands that make up the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe. The Minnesota Chippewa Tribe Judgment Fund Act 1272 authorizes the Secretary of the Interior to release the funds plus interest that's been earned that were appropriated into the trust fund for the Minnesota Tribe in 1999. Being the expenses for prosecuting the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe claims were shared equally by all the bands, these expenses should be expended equally from the fund. H.R. 1272 requires that each of the 6 bands provide the Secretary with updated membership rolls, directs the Secretary to set aside $300 to each member enrolled, and then divides the remaining funds into equal shares for each band. It's important to note that CBO has concluded that H.R. 1272 does not need an appropriation, has no budgetary impact because the $20 million settlement proceeds were appropriated and paid to the Chippewa Tribe in 1999. So they've been there since 1999. So I think it's high time that this settlement is finally distributed and put to work within these communities. The sooner we resolve this issue, the sooner these funds can be released and go to work within these economically depressed areas. There is a great need on these reservations for things like schools, healthcare facilities, and other infrastructure improvements. I want to alert everybody that this is not unanimous. 5 of the 6 tribes support this, and this has been going on for 13 years, but you know, this is as good as we can do. It's not, we don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good, and it's time that we get this settled. So we think it makes no sense for anybody to draw hard-line positions on this, and judging from experience, no hard-line position has ever succeeded. So it's time for everybody to come together and find an agreement that maybe not everybody loves, but everybody can benefit from. So that is what H.R. 1272 is. We encourage the adoption of the bill, and our folks back home would really appreciate getting this settled and letting these funds go to work on their reservations. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Kavak, the author of the bill.
The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank my good friend from Alaska for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 1272, the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe Judgment Fund Distribution Act of 2011, of which I am an original co-sponsor. I represent 5 of the 6 bands that constitute the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe, a sovereign, federally recognized tribal entity and the sole plaintiff in the litigation whose settlement gives rise to this legislation. The 5 bands that reside in my district are Bois Forte, Grand Portage, Mille Lacs, Leech Lake, and Fond du Lac. I've met with the representatives from all 5 bands and on a number of occasions in the 112th Congress, and they have all made it very clear to me that it is more than past time to bring resolution to this long-standing issue, and I agree. The Minnesota Chippewa Tribe entered into a $20 million legal settlement with the United States government in 1999 to compensate for damages stemming from the improper taking of land and valuation of timber under the Nelson Act of 1889. These settlement funds have been sitting in a Department of Interior trust fund ever since, and with interest have grown to about $28 million. That money now belongs to the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe. The United States' only role in this has been to temporarily hold it in trust for them until it can be distributed. Thus, I have joined with my fellow Minnesota representatives, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Paulson, in co-sponsoring the legislation before you today. This legislation puts forth a disbursement formula which reflects and honors the formula decided democratically by the governing body of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe, known as the Tribal Executive Committee. This formula, voted for and passed by the committee, supports a per capita apportionment of $300 each to each member, followed by a 6-way split for the remaining settlement funds. Importantly, H.R. 1272 will distribute the settlement funds according to the formula that has been determined by the CBO to have no budgetary impact. It is always difficult to craft a compromise between such varied and competing interests. However, the compromise represented in this bill respects the decision of the governing body of the entity that brought forth the claim on behalf of all 6 bands, and the U.S. Court of Federal Claims recognizes as having the constitutional authority to enter into a proposed settlement on behalf of all 6 bands. All 6 bands shared equally in the expense of the risk of prosecuting the case, and the Tribal Executive Committee provided the 6 bands an equal opportunity to vote on how the judgment funds should be distributed. The release of the $28 million to the members of the Chippewa tribe will have positive implications far beyond just righting a past wrong. This money will flow directly into the hands of the bands and their members, sparking much-needed consumer activity and hopefully investment in the reservations of northern Minnesota. This will benefit the entire region. H.R. 1272 is a solution that must be enacted in order to fulfill the U.S. government's legal obligations, conclude its litigation with the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, and release over $28 million in settlement funds in a fair and expeditious manner. Thus, I am hopeful that my colleagues will join me in support of the bill that brings resolution to this long-standing issue. I thank the Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields.
Mr. Speaker, if my friend, the Chairman Young, doesn't have any other speakers, we're prepared to yield back. Mr. Speaker, we yield back the balance of our time.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Speaker, I urge to pass this legislation, and I misspoke a moment ago. Congressman Collin Peterson has been fighting this battle for years and years, and I'm glad to see finally he has succeeded. He's the prime sponsor of this legislation, along with Mr. Quebec and Mr. Chip Wilson, so we're on the right track, but you are, and I want to congratulate you. Perseverance overcomes many things, and you persevered this time. With that, I yield back the balance of time and urge the passage of this legislation.
Gentleman yields. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1272 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alaska seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2938 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 307, H.R. 2938, a bill to prohibit certain gaming activities on certain Indian lands in Arizona.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Young, and the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Lujan, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Alaska.
I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extemporaneous materials on the bill under consideration.
Without objection, so ordered.
At this time, I yield 5 minutes to the author of the bill, Congressman Franks from Arizona.
Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Chairman Young and Chairman Hastings and the House leadership for bringing this bill to the floor today, as well as the bipartisan group of co-sponsors for their support. Mr. Speaker, H.R. 2938, the Gila Bend Indian Reservation Lands Replacement Clarification Act, seeks to prevent Las Vegas-style casino gambling in the Phoenix metropolitan area on lands purchased by the Tohono O'odham Nation. Mr. Speaker, the Tohono O'odham Nation has tried to manipulate the Gila Bend Indian Reservations Lands Replacement Act of 1986 to acquire lands for gambling which are more than 100 miles from the Tohono O'odham's existing reservation. This, quote, reservation shopping for casino gambling purposes is contrary to the express and public commitments that Tohono O'odham made between 2000 and 2002 to the other 16 Indian tribes in Arizona, the state, and the voters of Arizona when it openly and definitively supported passage of Proposition 202, a state referendum to limit casino gambling in the Phoenix metropolitan area. Indeed, while the Tohono O'odham was in negotiations with other tribes to craft a gaming compact agreement, they were simultaneously in the process of covertly purchasing a tract of land in the Phoenix metropolitan area for casino gambling purposes. Thus, the bipartisan co-sponsors of H.R. 2938 are simply trying to keep the Tohono O'odham Nation to its publicly stated commitment not to engage in casino gambling in the Phoenix metropolitan area. Mr. Speaker, during the subcommittee hearing on this bill, witnesses made it clear that there is a problem and a serious threat to existing gaming structures in Arizona if the Tohono O'odham Nation is able to develop a Las Vegas-style casino in the Phoenix metropolitan area. The passage of H.R. 2938 will prevent an ominous precedent that could lead to an expansion of off-reservation casinos and dangerous changes to the complexion of tribal gaming in other states across the country, in which Indian tribes can use front companies to buy up land and declare it part of their sovereign reservation for gaming purposes. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, even if the casino weren't in violation of federal law, which it is, but if it weren't, claims that the operation would create jobs and benefit the economy of the surrounding area are woefully misinformed at best and shamefully dishonest at worst. The most frequently cited job creation numbers that have been thrown around during this debate come almost without exception from a study commissioned by the Tohono O'odham tribe themselves. The study, quote, was conducted by the Spectrum Gaming Group. Tellingly, multiple organizations asked the tribe to release the data and the methodology supporting this so-called study, which was released roughly 3 years ago. And to this day, the tribes continuously and steadfastly refuse. In other words, the tribes released a slew of numbers extolling the supposed amazing economic benefits of their casino, then refused to tell anybody how they came up with the numbers. Far from economically benefiting the West Valley, one recent well-documented study found that casino operations would ultimately provide $172,500 of revenue annually for the city of Glendale. Keep in mind the surrounding areas would not benefit from the normal sales taxes, bed taxes, and property taxes because the casino being on tribal land would be exempt from all three. Meanwhile, the Glendale estimates an added cost of $3.6 million per year just for the additional cost of public safety services necessary to such a large operation. And of course, it should always be remembered, Mr. Speaker, that casino revenues are primarily comprised of gambling losses that would otherwise have found their way into the economy in more productive sectors. Mr. Speaker, my bill would not seek to take any lands away from Tohono O'odham. Consistent with the intent of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, my bill merely prevents the Tohono O'odham from building a gambling casino on certain lands, as it previously agreed it would never do. And I respectfully ask my colleagues to join me and the members of Arizona's delegation in supporting this bill. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from New Mexico.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, sir. And let me thank my good friend, Mr. Lujan, from New Mexico for his time. H.R. 2938 is named the Gila Bend Indian Reservations Land Replacement Clarification Act. However, do not be misled by this bill's benign-sounding title. It does not aim to clarify anything. Rather, it seeks to unilaterally abrogate an Indian land claim and water rights settlement, and it would also interfere with pending litigation in federal court. In 1986, the United States enacted federal legislation specific to this tribe and this situation. The Gila Bend Indian Reservation Lands Replacement Act, Public Law 99-503, to implement a settlement reached between the United States and the Tohono O'odham Nation. In this settlement, the nation released claims against the United States for flooding and loss of its land, as well as water rights of 36,000 acre-feet per year. In exchange for releasing the claims, Congress guaranteed via statute that the nation could obtain replacement reservations lands within 3 counties without restriction as to the use of that land. H.R. 2938 seeks to renege on Congress's solemn promise and change the material terms of the settlement. This while Congress contemplates in a very real way breaking its word to Indian country one more time. The legislation will reopen and change the terms of a 1986 bipartisan land settlement authored by Congressman Mo Udall, then Congressman John McCain, then Senator Dennis DeConcini, and then Senator Barry Goldwater, that compensated the Tohono O'odham Nation for 10,000 acres of land destroyed by the Army Corps of Engineers in the 1950s. By violating an existing settlement, this legislation will create new liabilities for the federal government, as taxpayers will have to provide more compensation to the nation as a result of prohibiting the purchase of replacement lands as provided in the original Settlement Act. Enactment of this legislation would also set a dangerous precedent in which Congress could unilaterally alter the terms of a federal settlement years later. If this is the case that would stop Congress from revisiting any settlements over the years, then all settlements are open for review. H.R. 2938 is a job-killing special interest legislation. The primary advocates of the legislation are wealthy gaming entities, tribal entities, trying to protect a monopoly on a gaming market. If they get their way, they will prevent the O'odham Nation from creating thousands of new jobs, permanent and construction. It reneges on the United States' promise to replace the reservation laws, and it vastly diminishes the Tohono O'odham settlement by imposing new restrictions on the land replacement provided for in the 1986 settlement. And it creates new liabilities for the United States. If this were to become law, 2938, it will breach the Settlement Act, and it will leave the United States liable for untold millions of dollars in taking claims for the land and water rights that the nation relinquished under the settlement on the original Settlement Act. And it undermines ongoing litigation. The same interests that support H.R. 2938 have brought various lawsuits to stop the nation from exercising its rights. But so far, both state and federal courts have fully upheld Tohono O'odham Nation's rights. The proponents of H.R. 2938 want Congress to change the law in order to legislate the victory that they cannot get through litigation. In addition, misinformation, distortion, and outright lies have been spread through congressional offices by a major lobbying firm in D.C. in the employment of the gaming entities opposed to the original law and promoting this law. This has nothing to do with reservation shopping. In no way would defeating this bill allow tribes to start buying up plots of land outside of, say, New York City and open up casinos. The original act was specific only to the Tohono O'odham Nation. The replacement land could be only purchased in one of 3 Arizona counties. In fact, the land in question is the exact same county, Maricopa, where the flooded land Gila Bend Reservation was located. So I think it is time to stop this. This land is purchased legally by the Tohono O'odham Nation, all in accordance with the Gila Bend Reservation and Replacement Act, to replace reservation land the U.S. government flooded and destroyed, to be used by the nation at their discretion for economic development. The innuendo of reservation shopping, or the idea that its defeat will cause rampant reservation shopping, is absurd and it needs to stop. I also want to address the idea that the compact guaranteed no new casinos in the Phoenix area. If this was the case, the only casinos that would exist in the Phoenix areas are the ones that were in existence in 2003. But lo and behold, the very tribes supporting this legislation have built two additional casinos since then. In fact, one of these tribes is about to break ground on a $135 million Las Vegas-style casino and hotel right outside of Southwest Phoenix. And finally, let's stop the lies that the administration is neutral on this bill. They have testified against it. I have spoken to them. Their position hasn't changed, and the administration does not support this legislation. This is a legislation that's costing disparate treatment of one tribe for the sake of protecting a market. The market should be competitive. This is not a violation of the Arizona Gaming Compact, and it is an aberration of a law this Congress passed in 1986 that is now being changed due to the whims of those afraid of a competitive market. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields.
Mr. Speaker, reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Alaska.
At this time, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Kozar.
The gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of my friend Trent Frank's legislation, H.R. 2938. 10 years ago, stakeholders from across the state of Arizona gathered together to come up with a 21st century plan to manage gaming activity. As part of that final agreement, many tribes agreed to forego building a casino to share in revenues as a whole. Gaming revenues were set aside for education, health care, and other measures to improve the lives of the average tribal members. The key part of the compact was a tribal agreement that no new additional casinos would be permitted in the Phoenix metropolitan area. The Tohono O'odham Nation agreed to those terms. But as they agreed to one thing publicly, they were preparing privately to undermine the entire agreement. The tribe has since acquired land in Glendale and has made it clear they intend to break their agreement and establish a casino on that land. This legislation ensures the Tohono O'odham Nation must keep the promise they made in 2002 to the other tribes, the state, and our constituents. Additionally, the small but vocal opposition to this legislation claims the bill before us seeks to unilaterally nullify an Indian water rights settlement. I assure my House colleagues that statement is false. Water rights associated with the Gila Bend Reservation were settled in the Arizona Water Rights Settlement Act of 2004, not the Gila Bend Act. The passage of H.R. 2938 would not affect the state's adjudication of water rights. Any claims to water rights based on Aboriginal occupancy that the Tohono O'odham might have claimed were also waived in the tribe's separate water rights settlement, an act that provided for a complete and total waiver of all such water rights in exchange for substantial consideration and payments. Last fall, the Department of the Interior testified on this bill, and water rights were not mentioned. The committee resolved any concerns during the markup of that bill. Today's debate is not about jobs or Native American water rights. It is about protecting the integrity of Arizona's gaming compact and preventing a dangerous precedent that could lead to the expansion of off-reservation casinos in other states. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on H.R. 2938, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New Mexico.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, 3 minutes.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 3 minutes.
Yeah, I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from New Mexico. H.R. 2938 should not have been brought to the House floor under suspension of the rules. This legislation doesn't name a post office or authorize a park study. H.R. 2938 instead is a highly controversial piece of legislation that will amend a settlement agreement between the United States and an Indian tribe, impose restrictions on a tribe's authority to use its own land, and circumvent years of federal and state court rulings. During consideration by the Natural Resources Committee, members from both sides of the aisle expressed concern about this measure. House members have heard from tribes across the country, Arizona state legislators, local mayors, small business owners, and community leaders on both sides of this aisle. The number of stakeholders with strong feelings on both sides of this issue is plain evidence that the bill does not belong on suspension. So we're here tonight. The implications for local, regional, and national gaming industry precedents are quite significant. And we should only bring suspension-worthy bills out here on the floor. And I say that because Mr. Grijalva from Arizona, whose tribal constituents are the sole target of this legislation, is being denied this opportunity and therefore any chance to address his constituents' needs. And I think that since it does affect his district, his tribe, he's on the Natural Resources Committee, he deserves the right to be able to make amendments that can improve this legislation, and he is not going to be allowed to do that. And so that is my view on this bill, that it's under the wrong process. Suspensions are really meant for bills that do not bring the level of complexity, the level of controversy that a bill like this brings to the House floor, and as a result, I urge a no vote.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Speaker, reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve at this time.